makulit yung mga nilalaro nila.
In the grid pattern, east-west is Decomanos, north-south is the Cardo, which we will be walking along as well. And therefore you have the new gate up here, then you have Damascus Gate, then you have Herod's Gate, then you have Flower Gate, then you have the Golden Gate, the Gate of Mercy, and the Lion's Gate next to it, then you have the Dun Gate, then you have Zion Gate, and you come back to Jaffa Gate. So 7 gates all in all that are here, which the city was divided into, as we're going now into the, that's the way it is, like that, right? David's Gate, so if we position it, David's Gate, Armenian Quarter, we're now going to the Patriarch's Quarter, or the Christian Quarter. Further down is the Syrian Quarter, that was at the time of the Crusaders. That's the Muslim Quarter today, and the German Quarter, which was given to the Teutonic Knights back in the 12th century and 13th century, is today the Jewish Quarter. And people ask, how come what are the Armenians doing here? Well, they were the first to convert to Christianity back in after 325, and therefore were given the choice path. What we see here is literally where the Crusaders divided the lines once they held sway here, but this is where it's been for the last 1,000 odd years in this particular section.
So when people were here, did they stay in that little corner, or how did that?
Each one knew exactly where their quarter was. You did not move out of the Armenian quarter and go into the Muslim, you'd probably be killed. It doesn't work that way.
Peacefully together.
There was a modus vivendi at that time, for sure, at the times. But when the Crusaders came, the Syrian quarter that was made up by Jews and Muslims, they slaughtered them. In 1099, there was a bath of water here. They said it was knee deep. They slaughtered them in their tens of thousands. The only ones that held out were the people here in the compound that was impenetrable, and the Crusaders came up and said, you know what, you can stay there. We'll sit around you for 3 years, you're going to die of hunger. They quickly understood that this was non, and they said, okay, we'll give it up, but we want safe passage. And they allowed them to leave here and go to Ashkelon along the coast, and it took 53 years before the Crusaders took the next castle down on Ashkelon. But they held out here out of all the entrances. The entrances that they breached the old city was through the Muslim quarter, and the northwest side on this side. When the Emperor Kaiser Wilhelm II came out in 1898, he came out for 2 reasons, and that was to dedicate 2 churches. One on Mount Scopus that we'll see when you get to the Western Wall, you can see it on the horizon, called the Augusta Victoria, named after his wife Victoria, and the second one was this one, which was the Church of the Redeemer. Also a Protestant church. So they're the 2 Protestant churches. Going back to 300 AD, coming down to here. As we go down to the actual crypt itself, and this is where the tradition is a bit more saving. This is the mountain where Calvin found the cave, the grotto, where stolen by Tel-Aviv. It was recaptured back. Stories that no one knows where it is now, and if it does exist, it probably doesn't exist anymore. They say where it was, they say those spoons, nothing like that. So no one knows where it is. That's just a chapel. Again, the room at the grotto, and this is where they claim that she actually found.
And this isn't where he laid it, where he going.
We're going to Mount of Olives. And why is that?
History as we're going, and we'll begin to see with these two empires, I think, aside from King Herod and the impact that he had on the building of the Temple Mount and the legitimate kings of the so-called Hashmonaim dynasty of the 2nd century BCE down to the time of King Herod on 37 BCE and his term of reign, perhaps these two figures had the most impact. On the left, Richard the Lionheart, the Crusader king, who came and retook Jerusalem, retook the Holy Land, not Jerusalem. The Crusaders came out in 1099 from that place that we saw outside at the Prophet Samuel's thing on Mount Shwat, and they began what was known as the First and Second Crusader Kingdom for the next 192 years. But from 1099 till 1187, the Crusaders reigned here until Salah ad-Din on the right came through and put pay to it on the 4th of July 1187 AD, and at the Horns of Chittim outside Tiberias vanquished the massive Crusaders. And how could he do it aside from being a great practitioner? Crusaders, heavy armor, heavy mace, heavy horses, heavy drapes, as opposed to the Arabian stallions, the light armor of the Saracens of Salah ad-Din, and the mesh that he wore. He wore 7, as they all did, 7 layers of mesh, of silk. And you say, what's going on? How can it be? But that stops an arrow, because the arrowhead comes through the first layer, the second layer, the third layer, it twists it around, it loses its velocity, and by the time it gets to the 5th and 6th, it has stopped. Now, it doesn't mean that it won't be, as it will. They survived a lot of the attacks by the Crusaders because of the silk they learned from the Mongols. Already had developed that as well, and he took them into account. And you can really see how they're dressed and embossed. These are Herodian from the time of King Herod, so 1st century BCE, and that's what is the temple. You will see it on the western wall. Above them are Mameluke, and above them are additions by the Ottoman. So you can really see the subsequent empires that are here in terms of the actual fortifications that they had. The compound here used to be King Herod's palace, and it had 3 towers, 3 massive towers named after his wife Miriam, his brother Philip, and his friend Fatsael. The only one that's left now is this magnificent tower, and that was the Fatsael tower that is left. The rest is gone, but inside, when we go, we'll pop in, we'll see what they have surrendered this town.
7.
Too much. But people assume 1. No, unbelievable story. And true. 5 times. December the 9th, 1917, the British were bivouacked around the city. The Turks could see what was happening and did not want to put up a fight because they did not want the British to bomb the holy sites of here. And they began to leave the old city. Outside 5 kilometers where we were, when I mentioned there was this little village called Lifta, which was a drug rehab center and about to be turned into a tourist artist colony. Sergeant Murdoch, Private Murdoch goes out in the morning and he's looking for eggs from the nearby village, bring his officers to the mess, wanted to cook them omelets. All of a sudden, there is a delegation of Arabs coming out with a white flag, and they say, we understand you're part of the British forces, we want to surrender the keys. And he's got the key, the mayor of Jerusalem, we're going to give you the keys to Jerusalem. He turns around and he says, forget it, you're crazy, I'm looking for eggs. What am I? I'm a private. No way, I don't want your keys, I want eggs. He went back to the camp and he told his Sergeant Murdoch and Sergeant Edgewood. They came out and said, whoa, this looks great. I'm going to go into history. They went out, met the delegation, accepted the keys. Trouble is, hey, why? Above a sergeant happens to be officers. So Brigadier Watson says, what's going on here? What's this? 2 sergeants are going to be put down in history accepting the keys to Jerusalem? He said, no way. You tell that mayor to come to me, I'll accept the keys. This was December the 10th. But above a brigadier, he's a Major General. Major General Watson says, hey guys, nah, I'm getting the keys to Jerusalem. So he got them, fourth time. But above everyone else is Lord Edmund Allenby, the commander of the Egyptian expeditionary forces that liberated Palestine from the Turks. He said, guys, relax, sit down. History is going to tell and write exactly who accepted the surrender of Jerusalem, and it's going to be me. And that's what he did. And on the steps of this citadel, King Lord Allenby came into Jerusalem through the gates, leading the expeditionary forces, and he said, no way am I going to come in on a horse. Where the Lord Jesus Christ walked in Jerusalem, I can't come on a horse. He got off his horse, walked in with the forces into Jerusalem itself, and accepted the keys to Jerusalem on the steps here. Right
An
here,
actual
right
key.
Right at the actual, yeah, they had the key, symbolic keys to Jerusalem. And how do we know that it's all true and if he's not making it all up? Is that this is the photo of Hussein El Husseini Effendi. There he is in the center. The white flag. Here are the two sergeants, and he surrendered Jerusalem to them. And then there's this little fella here as well, Menashe Yashel, little Jewish boy. And I say, what the hell? How did he get in the photo for posterity? He was a friend of the Husseini family. He was walking along the field, and they said, hey, you want to come with us? Come with us. We're about to surrender Jerusalem. He said, why not? So
Zurich. Luwang na. Ang ganda. Ganda dito. Ang luwang-luwang. Siya.